And we are back on the Build Phase podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Ben, and today we are going to talk about a lot of Versus stuff. Upper Deck did a stream earlier today where they revealed some new information, as well as a new blog post was posted shortly after the stream, which revealed some even more information. All this stuff is things that we want to talk about, and there's more other things that I am not going to touch on today, such as the reveal that the next arc after the MCU TV show arc is going to be Krakoa. I'm going to talk about that another day. So let's dive into the Upper Deck stream. So initially, they started talking about sets that come out in November, and I thought this was teasing a non-Marvel IP. Either I misheard or I don't know. Either way, they did not end up talking about non-Marvel IP first. The first thing they started talking about was Crossover Volume 4, which is now scheduled to come out next week. June 15th is the release date for Crossover Volume 4. This was originally supposed to come out December of 2021, a fact which Veets mentioned deliberately a couple times throughout the stream, which I think is kind of hinting that while other stuff is still in the pipeline, it was a 6 month delay for this set. It may be as much of a 6 month as much as a 6 month delay for some of the other stuff that we're waiting on. So we don't have any specific dates about when the WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, the MCU TV show sets are going to release, but they did say the previews are going to start for those not next week, but the week after, or within the next 2 weeks. I don't remember the exact date they said, but it was within the next 2 weeks. The previews are going to start for WandaVision. Although we did already get one, I guess the rest of that cycle of card reveals is going to start. Once that happens, that'll let them know when they're going to lock in the date for the release of that set. So that's all good news. Now, I can't. We have to acknowledge that yes, 6 months late on a set does kind of suck. That's not really what we want, but man, I'm not upset at all. Like, it just, after the couple of years we've had, I think more or less Upper Deck has done a pretty good job of getting product into our hands during the craziest, most trying global shipping situation that has ever existed, at least in my lifetime. And yeah, of course, we'd all like to have the cards that we were supposed to have, but I'm not upset about the delays. In the grand scheme of things, these kinds of delays I think are pretty trivial, and overall, I feel like they've done a pretty good job. So I don't want to dwell too much on that, but I can't just straight up ignore it either. So moving on, they also revealed a new card sleeve that's going to be coming out, which is Loki kind of tossing Thor's hammer. It looks very cool. As far as the sleeves that Upper Deck has been doing over the last few years, they have all been pretty good, but I feel like they've been getting better over time, and this Loki one certainly continues that trend. They did mention that they understand having promos on the Upper Deck website doesn't really do anything for the local game stores. It doesn't really incentivize buying product through local game stores, in which case, why are the stores supporting the game? And Veet said that a priority that he had was getting a program in place that's going to give something for those stores. Now, we have heard this before. We have heard this for a long time, but things are tough right now. I'm willing to give them more slack yet. I am not in any kind of like negative mode. I actually think it's positive that they're still saying all the right things, even if we haven't seen a whole lot of forward momentum on it. Again, I have a tremendous amount of charity for the situation given the state of the world at the moment. So that I actually thought was exciting. They mentioned the Gen Con formats are coming, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Non-Marvel IP stuff is still being worked on. I asked the question on the stream, something to the effect of, hey, should we just give up on this stuff? Like, is that where the expectation should be set, that we're just not going to see these? That would be disappointing, but, pull the Band-Aid off is kind of where I'm coming from. If that's the case, just tell us that that's the case, and we can go, okay, that's what we aren't going to get any non-Marvel stuff. The response was, we're still working on it. Which, yeah, it's best we're closing in on 3 years without a non-Marvel release, so it is starting to feel a little tough. But as I've said a couple times with regard to other issues that we've seen within the game over the past couple of years, I have a lot of charity for them on this. I'm not upset. I actually like that they're willing to say, hey, don't give up on this. We still want to get this done. And maybe I'm naive, but I genuinely feel like if the non-Marvel sets weren't coming, they would say, "Hey, you guys need to just give it up," kind of like they did with Bond. Bond is just not coming. That's what we were told. So I do think it's pretty encouraging to hear that they are working on this, and specifically around the non-Marvel sets, distribution and supply chain issues were kind of mentioned briefly. Now, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, and I don't want to imply that they went into a degree of detail they didn't on the stream, but both of those things were mentioned as factors at play. So there may be other stuff. I don't know the specifics. Uh, Veets did also say he is hopeful to see some non-Marvel stuff in 2022, at which Ryan reacted like, "Oh, that's this year." Yeah, that is this year. And at that moment in the conversation, Beats again brought up the fact that Crossover 4 is releasing a full 6 months late. So personally, I am not hopeful that we're going to see this stuff within 2022. I'm kind of setting my expectations as, hey, if we get it, that would be awesome. But if we don't see it till 2023, I'm not going to be pitchforks and torches about it. Uh, I appreciate the candor that they're telling us that they're still working on this stuff, and I'd like to see more of that from Upper Deck. So I certainly don't want to punish them for giving us news that isn't exactly what I wanted to hear. So, oh, here from my notes, I see WandaVision card reveals next week or the week after. Uh, release. So there's a lot of wait and see on the various things. So now I want to get into the article that was posted after the stream introducing Incursion, Steadfast Loyalty, and more. So I'm going to more or less just read this and then stop at some places to comment on various things. Hello versus System 2 PCG players. The keen-eyed among you have noticed there are two $500 events in addition to the main $5,000 versus System 2 PCG World Championship on the event list at Gen Con 2022. Today, we would like to not only announce what those events will be, but break down all of the activities for the best 4 days in gaming. Beginning with the big one, versus 2PCG $5,000 tournament. Friday at 10 a.m., the event requires decks constructed in the Life Goes On featured format. Let's take a segue over to Life Goes On. For those of us that haven't paid attention to this, let's see, when was this announced? This was announced in March. I have not thought about this format since then because it doesn't go into effect until July 1st. So, play only with the strongest in the multiverse. Each main character you choose must have 6 health, and each supporting character must have at least 2 health. Your main character and any that start outside the game must have at least 6 printed health at every level. Each supporting character in your deck and those that start out of the game must have at least 2 printed health. You can only use cards beginning from the volume, so this would be Deadpool and Friends onward, so that's the last 4 years of cards, I think. But you can use basic locations in your deck even if they're not from Volume 1 forward. You can include special locations in your deck that share a team affiliation with your main character or a supporting character in your deck. The standard separation of photographic and illustrated still applies. So this is the Gen Con format. This is the World Championship format that you can play for at Gen Con. The top 8 and finals of this event will be held untimed Sunday, 10 a.m. local time. This is fairly typical for Gen Con to break the event up over more than one day. Next, first side event we're going to talk about. This is Thursday and Saturday at 2 p.m. There are 2 new formats outlined below. They'll capped at 32 players each, and both offer an onboarding for league players into tournament play as well as a refreshing new format. So they have a draft cube Friday at 6 p.m. Pods of 8 players. Each player will draft from randomized packs. This is awesome. They're going to play in a 3-round single elim tournament after you construct your deck. Seeing an official versus event that's doing a draft cube is awesome. There's no details about what the specifics of the cubes are. My guess would be that the cubes are going to be made out of whatever the newest cards are. So players see the newest stuff in action, push the newest stuff. That would make sense. Plus, I mean, who doesn't want to play with the new stuff, obviously? If they're doing something cute with the cube, like some kind of a theme, I could see that being very on brand for Danny and Ben, but there's no details here. So my guess would be that they would lean towards building cubes out of like the Civil War box, maybe throw symbiotes in or something like that. I don't know exactly. Next up, League Play. So League Play, I suspect, is going to be the same as it has been in the past. 1 ticket gives you unlimited access to League Play all weekend. Get a free 200 card box and use those cards to build a game. or build a deck and play games to get promo cards and a playmat. More details to come. So this does say a free 200 card box, but the cost to enter League is like the cost of a 200 card box. So the way I have always looked at League is you buy a 200 card box and play for promo, or you're paying for the promos and you're sort of getting the card for free. But generally, to participate in League, you have to buy a 200 card box. Although the way this is phrased makes it sound like you're buying a ticket and then getting the cards for free, so that's fine. Versus 2 PCG beginner game. These are going to go on every hour of each day at Gen Con. They're demos, learn to plays, and otherwise a free way to learn and teach the game we love. Invite your friends to come on down, learn how to play. All money events required players to be 18 plus to play in. That's new. We haven't seen that before. Not going to comment on that further. Okay, now for the elusive side events. What exactly are they? Well, the first one will be a new loyalty format known as Steadfast Loyalty. We wanted to offer an easy entry point into tournament play as one of the $500 side events. One common theme that kept rising to the surface is loyalty, meaning decks that focus on a single team. A loyalty format is great for newer players since they tend to start off building a single team decks. It also provides challenges to veteran players. What team will you choose? How will you optimize them? The new Steadfast Loyalty format is like loyalty decks that you have seen in the past, but this time around things are even more loyal. All cards, excluding basic locations in your deck, and any associated piles must have the same team symbol. Regular universe rules apply. No neutral characters, no equipment, no plot twists, no locations except basic locations. Every card in your deck has to share the same team symbol. Steadfast Loyalty side event will start at Thursday, 2 p.m. local time. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So I have not thought about loyalty as a format in a very long time. I think the last time we ran a loyalty event in Build Phase League was season 2, I think. So it's been literally years. And at the time, there were a few very clear dominant decks that had kind of the best teams. And one of them, of course, was Luke Cage, given the reality shift plot twist. This guy was so hard to wound. And then when you wound him, he would heal stuff up. And that was a very dominant, loyal deck. Now, there have been so many cards that have come out since then. I am not even remotely prepared to try to sift through not only just the new supporting characters, plot twists, and etc. There's a bunch of new loyalty stuff that's come out in the crossover cards since the last time I've thought about loyalty in a seriously competitive way. So I think this might be interesting, but there are some real uneven teams here. Yes, nobody is going to be randomly assigned a single team. You know, we look at something like the Super Awesome Games Loyal event, which was a little different than the loyalty that we ran in Build Phase League 2. And I guess that actually was more recent. I'd forgotten about that. And it's not that partly because of how that event was set up. Not everybody played everybody, so we didn't get a good feel exactly of which teams. But there are some teams that are clearly more dominant than other. Defenders being one of them, Avengers being one. Some of these teams have so many options and such powerful cards that it does seem like there will be some clear winners and losers. As a way to get new players into the game, particularly to get new players crossed over from kitchen table into competitive play, I think this is brilliant. Putting cash on it to give that little, now it's not as big and prestigious as Worlds, nor should it be, but putting a little bit of cash into the pot, it gives people those nerves, it puts that pressure on, and this would be exactly the kind of event for a newer player to kind of bridge their way into playing in competitive events without necessarily having to jump all the way into Worlds at Gen Con. Because that's a lot of pressure, and it takes 2 days. Like, I could understand somebody being like, oh, I like Versus, and I'd like to dip my toe into competitive, but man, the big event seems like a lot. This is a bite-sized chunk. You literally only need to buy one box to be able to play. Now, would you be competitive with only one expansion worth of cards? That I'm not. Probably not. Even some of the best teams, their tools are spread out across small packs, giant size issues. So you're not necessarily going to get one box and be guaranteed victory or even being guaranteed competitive. There is going to be a little bit more going on in this format but if that's all you had and if that's all you wanted, you could reasonably play in a cash event for Versus. I think this is a really good idea. It's fair to say that this event is not specifically for me. While I do think this is interesting, this is something I would like to plan. Were I going to Gen Con this year, I think this event really is probably for the new player who is trying to get their feet wet, kind of see how it feels to play versus in a pressure cooker environment where there's cash on the line. And while it wouldn't surprise me if some of the big names in our game decide to take on this event and figure out what the best loyalty deck is and go in and play it, which could potentially create some lopsided games, I imagine. It wouldn't surprise me at all if some of the more experienced players take part in this event, but I don't think it's really for us. I think we're really reaching a point in the game where Upper Deck is clearly trying to create competitive events that appeal to like the new generation of players, which is a little weird to say it that way, but some of us have been around for a long time at this point. And sure, okay. Yeah, if there's people that are in that in-betweener stage or newer players that want a slightly easier but yet still competitive environment, perfect. Great. I see nothing but positives to say about this format and about the overall idea of having a side event that still has some cash in it. Like I like every part of that. Next up, a whole new kind of format, incursion. All right, strap in. After 6 years, the fabric of the multiverse is starting to tear apart. As one reality bleeds into the next, it's only a matter of time before they incur upon each other and whole universes get destroyed. Incursion is a new, ongoing format. Keyword here is ongoing. It will be available indefinitely, just like Multiverse, and it will be used at sanctioned events throughout the year, each year beginning in August. Incursion is going to start off exactly like Multiverse. All the cards in the game are allowed. Standard universe piles, rules apply. Now, I missed this. I missed that the first event was actually going to be in Multiverse, which makes it even cooler than I originally thought, but I'll comment after. I want to read a little more here. But here's the big difference. After each sanctioned incursion event, some of the cards used at that tournament will be destroyed by incursions. Those cards will no longer be allowed at future incursion events. It could be a single main character that gets destroyed. It could be a handful of cards. You'll never know until the event is over. Either way, it will make it so no two incursion events are the same, which is the goal. Incursion is an ever-evolving format. While Multiverse will remain full of anything goes craziness, and each featured format will shine a temporary spotlight on specific teams, characters, or other aspects of the game, Incursion will change over time. Okay, before I get to the little frequently asked question thing that they have here, let's just comment. First of all, I didn't realize the initial event was going to be multiverse. I figured there would be a list of deleted cards coming out first, and that's not the case. I like that even better than my misunderstanding. So we're going to have a multiverse event, and I think they said this was capped at 32 people. And after that, it sounds like based on the cards that are played in the event, some of them are going to be deleted out of the incursion format forever. So they'll never be able to play. So you could be the guy who got Outriders banned. I mean, Outriders deserve to be banned and this is kind of a way to do modern. This is a way to not officially ban any cards. And I feel like that's the needle they're trying to thread here. I think Super Awesome Games and Upper Deck are aware that there are some cards in our game, like Outriders, like Dark Phoenix, that are pretty degenerate, kind of not fun to play against, kind of not fun to deal with, but they are philosophically opposed to banning cards. They would rather ban and replace those cards. Well, that brings in a whole bunch of logistic issues because where does the replacement fit in? It's got to take up slots in the box. Any card that's in that box, if there's a replacement card in there for Dark Phoenix or whatever else, then that's new cards that we're not getting because those slots can't be used to give us the slapstick main character that everyone has been clamoring for. So I get it. I get the aversion. We don't. Plus, telling people, "Hey, this is a living card game," banning some of the cards kind of reneges on the promise of like you get all the things and then you get to play with all the things. So I understand all of the forces sort of amassed against getting rid of the relatively small list of problematic cards that we have in this game. I mean, if you look at the modern ban list that the community has come up with, that I think does a pretty good job of picking off all of the negative play experience cards, or at least the majority of the worst offenders. I'm sure there's a couple other cards, depending upon what your personal opinions are on it, that list maybe needs another addition or subtract or some change. We all have our own specific takes, but generally speaking, I think the modern ban list has done a great job of checking off the things in the game that we would like changed as a community. Incursion is going to give Upper Deck the ability, and Super Awesome Games the ability to do exactly the same thing, only it doesn't have the weight or the gravitas of being like, this card can never be played in any format ever again. Well, now they're just banning the cards out of Incursion. They sort of get to have their cake and eat it too. They can fix some of these problem cards. They don't have to print things or take slots away from other new cards that they'd rather be printing in order to fix those things. And they can still have multiverse kind of sit there and be multiverse and do its thing. And they can be like, well, we didn't ban these cards. It's just this unique format. I think they've done a pretty good job of threading this needle. Now, we have yet to see how it's all going to play out. We have yet to see how many cards are actually going to ban, how this is going to work. So let's dig into some of the questions, and then I'll have some more thoughts after we get through that. So you probably have questions. How does this work? What will determine which cards get destroyed? We're going to keep this behind the curtain for now, but as cards are destroyed, you will no doubt sense a commonality in the destroyed cards. We want the incursion to change a lot over time, especially compared to multiverse, so expect a lot of destruction. I don't know if that's positive or not. I do like the idea of having a format where the whole point is seeing a lot of change over time. This has been one of my general complaints about formats. One of the things that I didn't think they did quite well enough. They didn't go quite far enough in the featured format system. It seems like Incursion has heard that criticism and is taking it to heart. So good. Now, of course, if it gets so far that like the only things that you're allowed to play within the format are like not fun, or the cards that don't quite work or don't quite have enough support, like, I mean, that there is a point at which the pendulum swings too far the other way, but we haven't even started on the arc of the swing yet. So I don't even want to talk about that stuff yet. But I'm aware, I can imagine a state of the world where this could potentially go too far. But at the moment, I say go. Like, let's go far. I like the sound of that. Okay, how do we keep track of which cards have been destroyed? We will keep a database. We'll keep a database which lists which cards were destroyed and when they were destroyed, date and event. Over time, this list will grow and act as a record of sorts. This will be available at upperdeck.com/op and frequently updated as frequently as we have incursions. I really like this. Which cards were destroyed, when they were destroyed, like the date of the event. Like, I was there when they banned Thanos. Like, this could create so many cool stories and so much cool player engagement. Like, oh, I didn't even bring that card. They deleted it from the event and I still was able to win the thing, or whatever it is. Like, this feels exciting. This feels like a really good idea. Okay, next question. So you're just banning cards, right? Yes, sort of. Destroyed cards are effectively banned from future incursion events. However, this is in no way affects their legality in multiverse featured formats. The incursion destroyed list is completely separate from other formats. Also, the philosophy of banning is somewhat different here. We have banned and replaced cards in the past because of power level issues. In those cases, we felt we had to make a change for the health of the game. With incursion, banning cards is just for fun. Even if there is no dominant strategy or problematic interactions in a given incursion event, we will always destroy at least a few cards just to make the next event different. So if they have the healthiest, most well-balanced event, they're still going to nuke a few things. Yes, I can hear the more reasonable people reading a sentence like that and going like, this seems to have the potential that it could get out of control. Yeah, I can see that too, but like, let's be out of control for a while. Like, let's ban some cards, let's shake things up. Like, featured formats, I mentioned in this podcast, and I've mentioned many times over several episodes of this podcast, that my biggest criticism is I don't feel like they went far enough. I don't feel like they took enough risks with what they were trying to do with the featured formats. And I think Incursion might be the place where they're willing to do it because of the nature of the format, and particularly with the way they're framing this, like, hey, we're banning it for fun. We're not saying that we made a mistake in designing the card this way. And maybe this isn't overtly part of it, but I do feel like as a game designer, banning something you created probably sucks. It probably hurts. It's probably like, man, I put a lot of work into that. I don't want to ban it. So having the community be like, we don't want to play with this card anymore, probably doesn't feel the best. So there might be, I don't know. I'm speculating about about emotions there. But nonetheless, what I'm hoping is this incursion is going to end up being the place where we get to see femme fatale see play, where we don't have to worry about the looming Dark Phoenix threat, or we get to see what a lone gunman package without Langley might look like, or the specifics don't really matter so much to me as the general idea that they're going to have an evolving format whose purpose is not trying to create the most balanced format necessarily, but trying to create variety for variety's sake. Now, I know that that's not going to appeal to every player, but it appeals to me, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. And honestly, I kind of eagerly await slash welcome the day where we have to go, okay, guys, incursion's gone too far. They've trimmed too much off the tree. We need to let some of these cards back in. Like, I feel like that would be a fun problem to have. And certainly a different thing to talk about compared to I don't want to list all the cards off. The modern format ban list is a list of cards that, generally speaking, kind of annoy me. So overall, I think this is really positive stuff. Uh, it would be nice to have a little bit more ironclad specific dates with regard to when we're going to see some more new cards. It's been a really long time since we've seen some new cards. While we do have the crossover set coming, and there are some surprises for us in that box, I want to get my hands on Wanda. I know you're never supposed to look past the next opponent. I am looking past crossover for it. I'm looking at WandaVision and saying, I want you, girl. That's where I want to be. Uh, Not to say I'm not excited about crossover 4. I am. There's some stuff in that box that they've already revealed that I think looks really cool. But there's some stuff in the next box that looks even cooler, in my opinion. So this has been a really positive day of news developments within the Versus world. Although we haven't had concrete things moving forward yet, we are going to next week. We're going to see crossover 4. We've got all this plan laid out for us for what looks to be an awesome Gen Con. It's great to be a part of this community. It's great to be able to see this kind of energy and enthusiasm for the game from Upper Deck, and for them to bring us this stuff in live streams. And that's another thing. Over this period of COVID and lockdown and blah, 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 all this negativity, I think Upper Deck has done a pretty good job of upping their game and trying to get more community engagement. Not perfect. There's still room for improvement, but overall, I think we've got a great game here, and I think we've got an even better community. Till next time, go win some games.